Hello, and welcome to the summer edition of Uncommon Sense, a podcast presented by the CPA Education Foundation's Heshi CPA Knowledge Center. This podcast features conversations with Alberta CPAs sharing their insights on a wide range of timely topics. We're currently taking a break while we prepare for Season 2 of Uncommon Sense, coming later this summer. In the meantime, we've dusted off and reposted some of our episodes from the past year, as well as from our predecessor podcast, Straight from the CPA's Mouth. These episodes are as relevant today as when they were first recorded. So, if you missed them the first time around or just want to enjoy them again, now is the time to have a listen. And remember, we'll be back soon with Season 2 of Uncommon Sense, with new episodes featuring more uncommonly interesting guests and topics.
The term First Only Different, or FOD, was coined by Shonda Rhimes, an American television producer, screenwriter, and author who is best known as the creator of the medical drama Grey's Anatomy. In her 2016 New York Times bestselling memoir, Year of Yes, Shonda describes the experience of being a first only different. I am what I've come to call an FOD, a first only different. We are a very select club, but there are more of us than you'd think. We know one another on site. We all have that same wary look in our eyes, the one that wishes people would stop thinking it remarkable that we can be great at what we do while Black, while Asian, while a woman, while Latino, while gay, while a paraplegic, while deaf. But when you are an FOD, you are saddled with that burden of extra responsibility, whether you want it or not. I was not about to make a mistake now. You don't get second chances, not when you're an FOD. Second chances are for future generations. That is what you are building when you are an FOD. Second chances for the ones who come behind you. Joining me today, we have two women I consider to be first only difference in their field. Tope Roth, CPA CGA, and Meagan Schroeder, CPA CGA. Tope and Meagan are the co-owners of Roth Schroeder Professional Corporation, a Black and Indigenous-owned accounting firm like no other. Meagan and Tope, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
Thank you. Yes, we are.
Well, we're very excited to have you. So this episode kind of was inspired by an article that my coworker Sharon had wrote called In a League of Your Own for our magazine called Capitalize. So for our listeners, Capitalize is a publication that we use to market to post-secondary students, as well as the general public to introduce them to the CPA profession. So shout out to Sharon for this episode. So in the article, you guys describe your relationship as business besties. So how did the two of you meet? Maybe Meagan, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, we actually both worked at the Canada Revenue Agency. That's where I kicked off my career. And so we met in 2008. We both started at the CRA. And ironically, we were not friends, and we didn't actually become friends until early 2013, I think, as we were both leaving the organization. And Tope was just, Tope. She kept coming over to my desk. By this point, we knew of each other, but she sat on one side of the office. And then by the time we were leaving the organization, she was sitting close by, and she just kept coming over to my desk and talking and talking and talking. And eventually, she invited me out for some wine. And we kind of kept in touch after we left.
Yeah.
And then eventually we were both working downtown, and I texted her to go for lunch. I figured I was working by myself at this point in an office by myself. And so we met up for lunch, and we started going for lunch every day. And then we started
going to the gym.
Yeah, we went to the gym at lunchtime too.
I convinced Meagan.
We went for wine a lot. And then eventually we were just always complaining about our jobs at the time. And one day she said, let's start an accounting firm. So we said, okay. And that's how we kind of started the firm.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's where the idea came from.
Right. That's great. Tope, I hear you laughing in the background. What is your perspective on that? Is that a pretty accurate representation?
That's the Cole's notes, yeah, because just when I say the story, because at CRA, me and Meagan were completely, the perceptions of us were so different. So Meagan was part of like the good group and I was part of the black sheep. So she was part of the group of friends that didn't really care for me. And I just didn't care. They didn't care for me. So I remember I would go up to her and basically like annoy her every day. I could see it in her eyes, but I was like, well, I don't know you, so I can't not like you. So I'd literally just like harass her pretty much every day with like my tales of awe. And I feel like I eventually just wore her down and she realized she's really not going away.
So this friendship has definitely been progressing and budding over the years. So when did you know that you wanted to become business partners? Tope, did you want to maybe start us off?
Yeah, well, I think I remember we drink a lot of wine. That's kind of like a running theme in our relationship. And
I like alcohol.
We're not. We just appreciate fine grapes. But I remember we'd have wine because at that time when we started having lunch wine we were. Oh, yeah, I know. Well, because it's more in perspective. My office where I was working, after we left working downtown, I went and worked in an office that was like 4 minutes from my house. And so Meagan also ended up moving into that office because she was working downtown. So we'd meet at my house and have lunch because it was like so close. Mm-hmm. And we would talk about starting. I'd be like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what do I want to do with mine? And we both knew just from our backgrounds, like our backgrounds with our parents and our family are so similar. It's insane. Like to be so different, like visually, but so same at our core. So I had just said to her one day, like, what do you want to do with your life? And she was like, and I'm like, what do you want to do with my life? And I remember the first business we were going to start was going to be a project management business. Okay. And then because like we were already accountants and we were both controllers at different companies. And so that was already there. So we were like, we'll start an accounting firm, but we'll do this first. But then CPA, then CGA, CMA, and CA all decided to merge. And so I was like, hey, do you want to start an accounting firm? We should do that first because who knows what the rules are going to be like later. So she was like, yeah. So she had to go and take one extra course. Was it one or two? Just one. One course, because I had taken mine when we did it. And then we did the starting a firm thing. And then I think what drove us really was like her dad's a businessman. My dad and mom are business people. I think so. We've kind of come from that background of an entrepreneurial spirit. Mm-hmm. So I think together we kind of just, I don't even know if there really was a defining moment. We just did. Mm-hmm. Like when everyone says, when did you start the firm? It's really hard to give the exact date because I know the date we incorporated, but we just did. There was no point where it was like, we were working our jobs and taking meetings and Meagan had a baby for heaven's sakes. Like we literally were like, I remember she came to me. I think I was one of the first people to find out because of the circumstances, but she's like, so I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh, and I'm like, we're going to do it anyways. Don't worry about it. And we just did.
That's wonderful. So were there any, when you guys sat down and you decided, okay, let's start a business together, were there any specific questions that you asked each other to determine if your business goals align? I know you mentioned that you guys come from similar backgrounds in terms of your family owning business, but were there any questions you guys had to ask each other to figure out if you would be successful business partners?
I think the great thing about our story is it's not what you would read in the books of starting a business because there really was no plan. There were no questions. So it was certainly different in the sense we didn't interview one another. We just went ahead and did. And I don't think anything is wrong with that. And I do really like to preach that people should have a plan. Mm-hmm. And you certainly should know the person you're going into business with. In our case, we knew each other. We had known each other a few years by then. We didn't really know each other, but I think when you want something very badly, you can make it work because certainly we went into this not thinking of those things and how maybe we wouldn't get along in certain situations or where we wouldn't jive. And we've faced those situations. And when we face those situations, what we do is, we kind of be mature, responsible adults about it.
Exactly.
But when we first started really experiencing those problems, we actually brought in a third party to help us settle what was going on between us and help us to understand one another a little bit better and how we can work together more efficiently. So yeah, we didn't really have those questions for one another. We just went and dived right into it. And again, maybe it's not for everyone, but it certainly worked for us. And that's kind of the motto we go with. I like this saying that it is good to have a plan, and you can have a plan and then you can be stuck to a plan. And we're certainly not stuck to a plan. We just kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
Flexibility.
Yes.
I think at the core of, and that's why it's like there's differences when there's people who are going into business, like we're going to go into business as business partners. But we went into a business as, I think, even though we didn't know exactly how strong our friendship was when we went into business together, I think our core foundation of doing everything was trust. And I think that was the one thing that we had between each other. Like now we're like inseparable to the point where it's embarrassing, I sometimes say. And I think even people around us think it's like we're insane, but that developed over like just the core of knowing each other and like realizing how similar we are to each other and so different at the same time. So it's like sometimes we're like each other's devils and angels on each other's shoulders. So we're not the best frame of reference for each other, but
but a nice compliment.
Yeah, like we're definitely like, it's like a weird friendship that we have. So like, I always say when someone says like something happened in the business, like honestly, if the business was going to affect our friendship, we'd get rid of the business. Like that's legit the truth. So it's more like, it's such a different dynamic that I think the trust was what really we just even when people were like our naysayers, we would like defend our situation to the core and we hadn't even done anything yet.
Yes. So can you guys talk a little bit about the early days of Roth Schroeder PC? So what did a typical day as new business owners look like? And specifically that kind of transition, from the typical 9 to 5. Meagan, did you want to start us off?
For me, it was very different because we've been in business for 5 years and I have a 5-year-old daughter. So do the math. I had my baby, and 3 months later, we went into the firm. 3 months later, we went into the firm full time.
Wow.
So for me, it was balancing becoming a mom for the first time and having a newborn. So and going from that 9 to 5 job. It was really different for me in the sense that I had this new role as a mom. I was a business owner. We were starting the business. I wasn't as able to dedicate as much time, I guess, in the beginning, because I had the baby at home. So when I went home, I was with my baby, whereas Tope was like working around the clock to get everything set up. And I was very appreciative of that. But the transition was certainly different and stressful. We were both the main breadwinners for our homes at that time, I believe, right? So to go from our 9 to 5 into starting this firm, there were certain adjustments we definitely had to make. But I think, again, like we wanted it badly, so we just made it work.
And Tope, maybe you can speak to this, but I know a lot of our listeners are interested in entrepreneurship and starting their own businesses. So can you talk a little bit about how you both built your client base and what that looked like?
Honestly, because like I think the one thing we did agree with is we didn't want to buy a client list. One, they're expensive, and two, you don't really know what you're going to get. So we started with Kijiji ads, to be honest. That's exactly how we started the firm. We would hustle. We'd go to networking events and meet different people and talk up our business. I laugh back now because when I think of how the conversations we had then at networking events opposed to how we would have them now, I'm almost embarrassed. But you had to do it. We'd go there, and we're both natural. In social settings, we're both natural introverts. So doing those, like I'm a talkative, extroverted, outgoing person with people I know.
Mm-hmm.
But when I don't know you, it's a very hard push to put that on and turn that on. But we would go to like every single networking event we could possibly go to. We would post ads on Kijiji, any kind of social site that was pretty much free because, we hosted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we would host starting a business sessions at our office, and we'd have like wine and cheese. CPA even came to one of them. It was kind of interesting.
Oh, that's
So
great.
like, we did as much networking as we possibly could to be out there.
Yeah. So on the financial side, I guess in terms of your business, how important is it to be financially literate as a business owner? And what are some of the fundamental financial reports that every business owner should understand? Maybe I'll leave it to whoever would like to answer first.
I mean, obviously, yes, I think it's very important to understand the basic financial statements when you're going into business so that you can understand, your operations and maybe the decisions that you need to make, right? So I highly recommend everyone to understand exactly what an income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement is. They're certainly all important. I think the two main ones everyone looks at is the profit and loss or income statement and balance sheet. But I do think the cash flow statement is very important as well. And just for an example, I, had a client or company that did really well and had almost 40 million in sales, 8 million in profits, and everything looked great, but cash flow wise, they were going under. So it's very important to know and understand those financial statements, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think like for us, when we're looking at our business, it's different. We're accountants, so it's easier for us to look at our financials and kind of get them. But I think if there's one statement, and it's unfortunate because it's one of the statements I think when we're in accounting and taking school we hate is cash flow statement.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually the most important statement that a business owner could understand, because I think a lot of times when business owners look at their income statement, they're misled because they're not realizing all the transactions that hit the balance sheet that they're not accounting for, especially their own shareholder draws. Those don't hit your income statement. So when you see, I have this net profit, and you're not going and looking at your balance sheet. So that's why the cash flow, it does kind of capture both of that and shows you your net cash position. So if there's any one statement that a person should rely on, I would say it's the cash flow statement of all the statements, just because it will capture everything, the ins and outs. It's amazing, like Meagan said, when a company is like, has all this revenue and everything, and then they're like, oh, why am I in a deficit and why can't I make it work? They just never looked at the cash flow statement, didn't realize they have no cash.
Yeah. So, I mean, regardless whether you're a CPA or not, these are kind of fundamental reports that everyone should be able to at least have a base understanding of.
Absolutely.
100%. And also understanding your break even. I think that's a really big one, because a lot of times people do things like, especially during COVID right now, understanding what it is you just need to keep the lights on, your bare minimum, is a really good mental benchmark to have. Because what I do at the firm here is mostly controllership work with clients, and going through COVID, that break even, for them to understand, like, this is what you actually need to get by every month. The rest of it you can dump. That's a really good understanding to have. So then when people are freaking out that they can't keep their businesses going, it's like, can you or can you? You know what I mean? So like that was for a lot of the clients, I'm seeing it as they're like, oh, darn, I can keep my business going if I cut everything out that's not my break even.
Right. No, that's great. I did want to shift gears a little bit and talk. Obviously, you guys are both breaking barriers within the CPA profession. You're a company, Meagan, you are an Indigenous woman. Tope, you are a Black woman. Can you identify a memorable or meaningful moment where your career as an accountant intersected with your identity as a Black woman, Tope, and as an Indigenous woman, Meagan? Maybe Tope, would you like to start us off?
I don't know. I think it's honestly the article that was written, that was a big one, because I think when we were both reading the article, we almost looked at each other like, oh, do you know what I mean? So I think because we're both Canadian born, like I'm Canadian born, and just going through everything in the daily, just getting it done. I know for me, it's funny when I go into meetings, because my voice sounds the way it does, I get the look, and I know what the look is when I walk in.
Right.
So that's always interesting to me. I kind of find it funny. I guess the other one where I thought was kind of cool was when I won the award and Meagan won her award. For me, that was like, oh, I won an award in my first year of business, basically. But it was being an Afro-Canadian. So that was kind of entrepreneur. So that was kind of cool to win something so early on. So, but yeah, I think if I'm going to be honest, in a way, we've taken it for granted. Yeah. We've taken it for granted in the sense of really understanding what we look like to other people. A lot of times other people they'll say to us, like, tell us how great we are and what we're doing and how great, and we're like, oh, it is? Do you know what I mean? So I think for us, we're just doing.
That's a really good point. No, that's great. And yeah, I mean, it is one of those things that maybe you don't necessarily understand the impact that you are having on people until it's already happened and you have an opportunity to either see it on paper or physically feel it in the form of an award or something like that.
Exactly. Meagan, do you have one?
I think for me, there was a comment made one time where this person was very shocked that I was female, Indigenous, and owned a business. And like I felt proud, but at the same time, it didn't feel great because it was like they were so shocked that I was Indigenous and that I owned a business. And so for me, I'm really working towards that not being a thing, that we can be recognized, regardless if I'm Indigenous or female. Just the fact that I own a business and I'm doing well, the fact that I'm Indigenous shouldn't really play a part, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it shouldn't be really something exceptional.
Exactly. Yeah. And so for me, that's what I'm really working towards. But I do see, there's a lot of comments made, in my community and whatnot that people are not shocked, but they're happy to see me being successful. And if that's an inspiration for someone, then great. That's what I would definitely like to be.
Of course, it's a really big moment. Another thing I did want to touch on, Tope, can you talk a little bit about your identity as a Black woman in the CPA profession? I know you touched on it a little bit, but how do you continue to bring your authentic self to work? So obviously now with your current business that you both own, but as well as maybe in those early days when, you're working for the CRA or other organizations and you may have been, say, the only Black woman in the room.
I think when I have felt the differences throughout my career, for sure. I think I try mentally just to not let them dictate how I operate or how I lead my daily goings on. But I do know, I faced it in every job, I think, or place I've worked, which is probably why I have to own a business because I kind of just beat to my own drum. And so I do feel like when you're a Black woman, and the stereotype is that we're loud, and which I am, but okay.
But other people are loud too.
But we're also aggressive. And I think that is the biggest stereotype that I feel like I've had to almost fight without being a part of the argument. So a lot of the jobs I'll have, it's like, and at CRA was a prime example where I was almost perceived as being one way, but no one actually knew me. So it was so weird because I'm like, how come all these people talk about me, but I actually have never engaged in conversation with a significant portion of these individuals. But I think the stereotype of a Black woman being loud and aggressive kind of almost preceded me. And there was nothing I could really do about that. And I remember when we were not working at Sierra anymore, I would say to Meagan, I go, isn't it weird that people who I've never talked to still talk about me? I'm like, I just must be popular. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never engaged in them. So I think almost like sometimes when you are a Black female woman in a working environment, I think because the stereotype is that you're loud and you're rude and you're aggressive and you're angry, I almost felt like people would try to push your buttons to have you almost justify that narrative.
Right.
The more I didn't engage, the more people pushed. That's kind of what I've always felt when I would be in those situations. Even and it's kind of followed me through my whole life where it's like, so I think because I've always tried to not be that aggressive person, I almost would let things happen to me where people would take advantage of me just so I wouldn't have to engage in the argument because I just don't like arguing. But I'm learning this year, especially this year, that it's not a good way to operate because people do take your passiveness for using you. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like that is one thing I think being a Black female has impacted me, is where I will try to be less than so that I don't
Yes.
engage in those arguments. But this year I'm like, you know what? That's enough. I really do need to. Me and Meagan had gone to New Orleans last year, and we went and saw a psychic and she had said, rest on your laurels. And it was weird because most people usually say, don't rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
And she was saying, you're trying to tame your tiger to be kind of like unseen. And it resonated with me when she said that, because I'm like, I really have been doing that. I've been trying to just kind of toe the line. And this year I'm like, you know what, I'm done towing the line, because when we started this business, we weren't towing the line. We were aggressive and we were out there, and that's what got us to where we are. So I think the last 2 years I've kind of gone through like an identity shift, because we kind of got here so quickly that it was almost like, should we be here? Do we deserve to be here? And this year I'm like, you know what, that's it. We do deserve to be here. We've worked really hard, and we should stop towing the line to make ourselves less than, so that people feel more comfortable around us. And that's what I think this year has really taught me, is like, we earned being where we are. We've worked, we sacrificed, we've spent the long hours, we've worked sometimes 20-hour days, sleeping 4 hours and coming back here again to do it all over again. So I don't think that we should let our ethnicity bring us down or toe the line anymore.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think it is really important to celebrate your successes and how far you've come. And I think the fact even to probably just the idea of being a first something, it seems so intimidating and it seems so scary. And it's interesting to know that in 2020, we're still celebrating a lot of firsts. And it's a good reminder that we still have so much farther to go.
For sure. I completely agree.
Me too.
Yeah. So one thing that came out of the article that Sharon wrote for our Capitalized magazine, and Meagan, you did mention it earlier, was that idea that people are shocked to find out that you're a business owner, but that you're also Indigenous. And this is just more of a general question, but how do you believe that businesses can continue or begin to push for more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces?
I think, just embracing culture and the diversity within the office. And here at our office, we have a very diverse team. But, maybe on National Indigenous Day, there's, even if it's just an email recognizing that day, there's the Chinese New Year, there's all sorts of special holidays for various groups. And I think if employers recognize those, and it doesn't have to, it's not like you need to have an elaborate party or anything, but just recognizing it by sending out an email and saying, hey, today is, Chinese New Year, and we recognize those within our office, or maybe there is none in the office even. I think just the employers really making that effort to make everyone feel included and to celebrate their heritage and cultures.
Yeah, I agree. Tope, did you have anything to add to that as well?
I think it's for me, because I have like a mixed bag on the inclusion and diversity, especially right now with the Black Lives Matters movement, because for me, it's like this is a crazy example, but I'll just give it. I saw that the current bachelor, he's a Black man.
Right.
And I'm like, why did it take that Black Lives Matter to have a bachelor as a Black man? And so I'm almost like, why? I feel like inclusiveness should be every day. It should be all the time. It shouldn't take someone not being able to breathe to make these big box people say, oh, let's make a Black man the poster boy so that we show we're not racist. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not just Black lives. So I've been struggling with it, to be honest with you, because it's not just Black lives. There's Asian, there's Indigenous, there's East Indian, there's so many different races. And so it's like, I would have almost been more respectful of ABC or CBC or any of these news outlets if they had put an Asian man as the bachelor, because it's not just Black lives. So I'm almost kind of like, I'm getting to the point where a lot of it is starting to feel almost disingenuous, just because it took that for this to happen. But I'm like, what to me would make things seem better right now is if all races were being lifted up, not just, because it's almost like now I'm starting to feel like, I'm like, is it white and black now? That's crazy. And that's not the world. The world is a lot of different races, of all different backgrounds, of all different ethnicities. And so I don't want it to become so much because of this Black Lives Matter that the other races that have been through struggles and have been through trials and tribulations don't get a part. Does that make sense? So I think that's the struggle I've been having a lot lately, because I'm just such a logical person. And when I think through things, and I'm like, logically, this doesn't make sense, because now it's almost like Black lives have almost taken a stronger stance than other races, when that shouldn't be the case. We should all be at the same stance. And so I think that's the struggle I've been facing lately. Like and it's so bad, because like when I saw the Bachelor thing, I think I texted Meagan. I was like, of course. And she's probably just like, shut up. And I'm just like, no, I'm like, I gotta say, this is insane. Like it's a bit much. It's overkill at this point.
Yeah. So what I'm really hearing is that it's important to be constant and consistent with, in terms of like diversity and inclusion and equity in workplaces. It's a constant battle. It's not something, people shouldn't view it as a checkbox. It should be something that's constantly top of mind.
The last thing you want to have now is another race have something this horrible happen to them. And because of that horrible tragedy, then all of a sudden that race's lives matter. They should always all matter, is how I'm looking at it.
Right. So just to kind of wrap up, I really appreciate all of your thoughts here and your vulnerability and everything that you've shared. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience today. Before we wrap up, though, I do have one final question for you. What is one thing you both would like to accomplish in 2021?
Oh, geez.
Well, I wouldn't mind opening, because so before COVID, me and Meagan were going to expand. But because of COVID, we really couldn't do it. We were launching our expansion like the month or two after COVID hit. So that's all been put on pause. So I wouldn't mind seeing us go back and kind of be able to accomplish even the one location this in 2021. That would be like awesome.
Yeah, I would say the same. My business goal, certainly, like Tope said, we were getting ready to launch the expansion. So what we've done in the meantime is we've been rebuilding, spoiler alert, we're doing a rebrand. So we're hoping to launch that very soon in the new year, and run with that to open hopefully some new locations and expand the business. So that would certainly be my business goal. And my personal goal. So when you first start a business, you work so hard and you're putting in all the hours, and you think that's what you should be doing, right? And you wear yourself out. And so my goal for 2021 personally is to not be hard on myself when I take a weekend off. That, I can take a weekend off and it's okay. And I can enjoy that weekend. And so that's really my goal for 2021.
Great. Just to give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
Well, I do wish you both all of the success as you continue to expand your corporation. So once again, I thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening to this encore episode of Uncommon Sense. The Uncommon Sense podcast is presented by the CPA Education Foundation and funded by the Heshie CPA Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center was created through a generous donation by the late Brian Heshie. Brian was a distinguished Albertan, business leader, CPA, educator, and community builder. His generosity and commitment to education underpinned his good works across Alberta throughout his lifetime. The opinions expressed on Uncommon Sense do not necessarily reflect the views of the CPA Education Foundation. We would like to acknowledge that CPA Education Foundation offices are situated on the traditional Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and Métis Nation homeland. The Foundation acknowledges that we reside on traditional and ancestral territories of many Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Their histories and culture influence our community to this day. The Foundation is committed to helping build a province where Indigenous people, and their voices and experiences are heard, valued, respected, and celebrated. Technical and recording services for this podcast provided by Wolf Willow Studios in Edmonton. Uncommon Sense returns with new episodes in August. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. If you have any comments about the podcast, write to us at cpaef@cpaalberta.ca. To learn more about the CPA Education Foundation and the Heshie CPA Knowledge Centre, visit cpaalberta.ca/foundation.